Back to the daily grind, and shout out to the full-time patrons. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back bagel biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
And what is going on, full-time family? We got a lot of fights to break down this weekend. This weekend we will have Bellator 215. I believe also Bellator 216 is going down this weekend on Saturday. But this Friday, we have a good card coming up with a prospect that I encountered while doing research for this video that I've became a pretty big fan of. So with that being said, salute to Mike Kimball. Alright, this event is going to be headlined by Mitrione and Sergey Kharitonov throwing down in a heavyweight scrap. That's going to be the headliner. The co-main event is going to be Logan Storley versus Ian Pascu. And if I'm not mistaken, Ian Pascu's the dude that Conor McGregor was sparring with ahead of his Khabib Nurmagomedov fight. That he said they were sparring without mouth guards, and that's how Conor had a little bit of a, I wouldn't call it an injury, but he had a scrape on one of his fingers. People pointed out, and they thought Conor was injured going into the fight, and he said, no, we were just sparring without mouthpieces. So yeah, that's that guy. But as far as his Bellator career, he's got a really tough fight coming up against Logan Storley, who's one of the better wrestlers in Bellator's welterweight division. Now, that's also another prospect, but I've known about Logan Storley. He's definitely a beast. But we're going to start at the beginning of the main card, and it's actually going to be with Mr. Van Zant, Austin Vanderford, versus Cody Jones. That's going to be the first fight we break down, so bear with me as we get past this opener. You might know who Austin Vanderford is, you might not. Mr. Vanderford, aka Mr. Van Zant, really got on everybody's radar when he got in a relationship with the UFC star Paige Van Zant. Now I believe they're married. He's 6-0 as a pro, and he even earned a second round submission win on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series in his 5th pro fight. But it looks like the UFC didn't want to do business with PVZ's new hubby because they didn't sign him to a contract. So after that, he went on to win another fight, and he got a TKO on his opponent in that fight in the first round. And that fight earned him a contract with Bellator, which is where he is now and where he'll face Cody Jones. Cody Jones is also making his Bellator debut, and he's currently riding a 4-fight winning streak. As far as who I'm taking to win this fight, no surprise here, I'm going with Mr. Van Zant. I'm picking Austin Vanderford. He's been fighting tougher competition throughout his career, in my opinion, and he's even been fighting on bigger stages, so it's not like the moment should be too big for him. He's had a couple fights since becoming Paige Van Zant's husband. He's fought on Dana White's Contender Series, so those are pretty, big stages for relatively newer fighters. So I'm taking Austin Vanderford. Moving on to a fight I'm really looking forward to breaking down. And if I would have known as much about Mike Kimball as I did when I started my predictions, I probably would have had like a Mike Kimball spotlight by now. I mean, going into this fight, I was kind of 50-50 because, yeah, Mike Kimball's got some potential. He's had some quick knockouts. He's tied for Bellator's fastest knockout in history. But I'm not going to hype a guy up just because of 2 quick knockouts. It's not enough. When I just see your record, you're 2-0, 2 quick knockouts, that don't mean anything. I need to know, who have you been fighting? How have you been doing? What's your drive, your motivation? And Mike Kimball seems to have that. He's even got a nice little personality as well, I think would help be marketable. But if we're just talking about the fight, which is what this is for, Mike Kimball is a talented. He's extremely athletic. He fought 4 amateur fights. This is why I pumped the brakes before I was ready to really become a fan of this guy. Yeah, he's had some quick knockouts. He's 2-0 as a pro. His first win was a 63-second finish over Jeremy Thin. I forget his opponent's name, but no, Jeremy Potts was his second opponent. So his first win, 63-second finish. His second win, he got a 6-second KO, tied for Bellator's fastest in history. And he said, I shouldn't have touched gloves or else I would have had the fastest KO in history. I kind of liked that. So with that being said, 2 impressive KOs, but as an amateur, he went 4-4. Also, as an amateur, I don't believe he's ever won a decision. He's kind of a finish or be finished kind of guy. So while he does have a lot of potential, and I am looking forward to watching his upcoming fights, I cannot proclaim him as a future GOAT yet, but he does have promise and potential. He has talked about, you know, potentially he could see himself as being a face of Bellator in years to come. There's a lot of other prospects coming up in Bellator, the Aaron Picos, the AJ McKees, the Logan Storleys, just a lot of other studs are coming up over here in Bellator for sure. But Mike Kimball, he says the difference between him and those guys, and he said no disrespect to those guys, he said everyone that I've had to fight has been a tough fight. The guy that he fought, Jeremy Potts, he said he was a high school wrestler. He'd been wrestling since he was 3 or 4 years old. I was probably supposed to lose this fight, but that's not what happened. Hey babe, I'm recording this video, 1 second. So with that being said, Mike Kimball hasn't had the easy road, and even though that's the case, I still look at those amateur fights and I still have a little pause for calls with you know going 4 for 4 as an amateur. So I want to see where this kid's future goes. I'm excited. If you watch this interview, you'll probably see a little more of the personality side I was talking about. But I mean, if you watch his first 2 professional fights, and he's got a great fight team, he's got great management, I think this kid could be onto something. I'm really looking forward to see what he can do in Mike Kimball. Now, that's enough on Mike Kimball. With that being said, he's going to be taking on John Duma. And while I do think Mike Kimball, I'm giving him the slight edge to win this fight, John Duma isn't just some easy fight. He's not a scrub. He can win this fight. He's got a lot of heart. He's got cardio. He's got a great fight team. So John Duma's not a slouch. So that's why I was going into this fight 50-50. Right now I'm about 60-40 Mike Kimball. So I am going to pick Mike Kimball to win. But I think he'll probably be the most athletic guy Duma has fought in his career to this day. And Mike Kimball's extremely dangerous, but like I said, I can't be super confident because the amateur record, I don't know how well Mike Kimball's cardio is. He doesn't seem like a guy who's going to have terrible cardio. He seems like he has great self-motivation. You know, he's a guy that doesn't like to dwell on his past wins. Like, oh gosh, I'm the guy with the 6-second knockout. Oh, I got a slam knockout in my first fight. No, he's ready to move on to the next. I really like that about him. He's not dwelling on he's not showcasing his pretty face. He's not just trying to be a marketable guy. He's like, yeah, I got a pretty face, but I didn't get this by not working hard. I'm still getting busted up in training every day. I'm still getting tapped out in training every day, getting slammed in training every day. So people that think they're just going to come and hold me down, no, I'm working on everything. So I like where his mindset is at. So we'll see where he goes. But John Duma's no slouch. John Duma has multiple wins by submission through the amateurs or the pros. So if this fight goes to the ground, that will be a good test for Mike Kimball, because John Duma also had about 7 amateur fights and he had a better record. He went 4-2. He showed a lot of heart throughout his fights in John Duma. He's been beaten up through the first and second round to the point to where the fight was almost stopped. And he came back and got a 3rd round submission. Now, with that being said, that, in my opinion, that sort of style kind of favors Mike Kimball, because it don't matter how tough you are, Mike Kimball's a motherfucker. You can't just be a guy that likes to take ass, not likes to take ass whoopings, but yeah, you can have a lot of heart, but if you're facing Francis Ngannou, your heart's not going to stop you from getting KO'd. And I'm not saying Mike Kimball's Francis Ngannou, but what I'm saying is, yeah, Derek Lewis is a really tough fighter. He's known for coming back in fights. He's known for his ability to withstand a beating and come back and get the win, the KO in the 3rd round. But if he would have got touched by Francis Ngannou in the 1st or 2nd round, or somebody that's extremely powerful, that heart really wouldn't have mattered, because Francis Ngannou's putting you down. And I feel like that about Mike Kimball, with how athletic he is for this bantamweight division, how powerful he is. He can knock a motherfucker out. He can ground and pound you. So, man, you know, if you get in a position where that's happening, I don't see someone just making it out of that with their heart. But if they do, man, that could be a point where Mike Kimball's cardio gets tested. So if John Duma doesn't get finished, if we make it to the 2nd round, where will Mike Kimball's cardio be? So this, I know I've spent way more time on this fight than a lot of people probably care about, because it's, you know, there's 2 Bellator cards this weekend and UFC fights, but I'm really looking forward to this fight because of this kid, Mike Kimball here. It's kind of like me with like Kayla Harrison and Aaron Pico. When I see somebody with a lot of like potential, I like to watch their fights, and I like what I've seen from Mike Kimball so far. So looking forward to this fight. I'm giving the slight edge to Mike Kimball. Let's move on to the next fight, Full-Time Family. And by the way, if you check out my Twitter at MMA Fulltime, I shared an interview of Mike Kimball where he talked about some of this, where you got to see his personality after his last fight and stuff like that. So you can go check out my Twitter and see that video there. All right, moving on to Eduardo Dantas versus Toby Misesh. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce his name. I might as well leave the green check mark over Eduardo Dantas because that is who I'm going to be picking to win this fight. Eduardo Dantas is one of the top 15 bantamweights at Bellator. Currently, he's riding a 2-fight losing streak, though, to current champion Darrion Caldwell and then most recently Michael McDonald. He's got 13 fights under the Bellator banner at 10-3, and he really has only one loss to Bellator's, he's really only lost to Bellator's finest. Not only one loss. He has 3 losses in Bellator, but he's only lost to really good guys. First, Joe Warren, then the champion Darrion Caldwell, and then Michael McDonald, all experienced, all really tough fighters. So he hasn't lost to any scrubs. And Toby Misesh, I wouldn't call a scrub, but his record isn't comparable to the guys that Eduardo Dantas has lost to. So what I'm saying is Eduardo Dantas has fought, I feel like, a lot higher level competition in his Bellator career so far. So that's part of the reason I'm giving him the nod. I feel like, and they're the same age, there's no huge age, or youth advantage here for either fighter, but Eduardo Dantas does have the experience advantage. He's got 9 more fights than Toby Misesh and a lot better record. He's 20-6 compared to Toby Misesh's 11-6. So Toby Misesh would have to go on a 9-fight winning streak to get where Eduardo Dantas is right now. And Eduardo Dantas has actually fought some good guys because he's got 13 fights in Bellator. It's not 13 fights in the UFC, but it's right next up. And he's been fighting the better guys at Bellator, so that's actually impressive. This fight, now the one thing about this fight I'm not sure of is the weight class. You can see on the screen Eduardo Dantas is a bantamweight and Toby Misesh is a featherweight. So if this fight happens at bantamweight, I'm for sure going Eduardo Dantas. If it happens at featherweight, I'm still picking Eduardo Dantas, but it'll still be interesting to see, how he looks at a new division. And I guess that could give Toby Misesh, it could swing the scales a little more in his favor if it's, if Eduardo Dantas is not going to be fighting at his natural weight class, even though we've seen a lot of guys go up 10 pounds and still have success. So that's why I would still pick Eduardo Dantas. But if this fight happens at featherweight, there's a little more parity, and I think it does give Toby Misesh a little bit better chance to pull off the upset. So I'm going with Eduardo Dantas in this fight. Moving on to the co-main event, we got Logan Storley versus Ian Pascu. Ian spars without a mouthpiece against Conor McGregor Pascu. Logan Storley is undefeated at 9-0 in his career, and he was a stud wrestler before turning a pro MMA fighter. I mean, if you go to Tapology, this kid's damn picture is a picture of him in a leotard, like hulking out with a cut above his eye. And so, I mean, he's been a beast since he was a wrestler. He started off in the RFA, which has since turned into the LFA, which is kind of, I don't want to say rebranding itself, but kind of becoming like a feeder league for the UFC, and I guess Bellator too. Like a lot of good wrestlers and good fighters go to the LFA before going to the highest level, and that's the case with Logan Storley. Logan Storley since then has went 4-0 in Bellator. His opponent Ian Pascu has a lot more pro experience than Storley. He's got 18 more pro fights, but he's 0-2 in Bellator, albeit against some tough guys. He fought Ed Ruth and Lorenz Larkin, so he wasn't fighting scrubs, but he did lose both of those fights. I'm going to take Logan Storley to win this fight. He's an up-and-coming stud wrestler, and I think it's going to be a similar style matchup with Ian Pascu to the Ed Ruth fight. With that being said, I think this guy, Logan Storley, he's an up-and-coming stud wrestler turned MMA fighter that Scott Coker has under his roster that I think has a chance of becoming one of the better MMA fighters in the world, similar to the Ed Ruths and the AJ McKees and the Mike Kimball's and the Aaron Picos. Because a lot of people don't know, and a lot of people do. A lot of the best UFC champions came from Scott Coker's tutelage. The Daniel Cormiers of the world, and all those people that were signed by Strikeforce, and the Ronda Rouseys. I mean, so many of the UFC's biggest and best fighters actually came from the tutelage of Scott Coker whenever the UFC bought Strikeforce. And those are guys that Scott Coker went out and found. And now he's went out and really found a new crop of killers under the Bellator banner. And Logan Storley's one of those guys. So I think he can win this fight. It will be a little bit of a step up in competition, probably his most experience he's fought to date. But I think he can win this fight on a similar path to victory that Ed Ruth took, being the young stud wrestler. So I'm giving the edge to Logan Storley in this fight. Let's move to the main event, the reason that a lot of people are here. And let's see, I'm not sure who I'm picking in this fight exactly. So let's move the check mark back to the center, and we will break the main event down. Matt Mitrione is coming off of a loss to the current Bellator heavyweight and light heavyweight champion Ryan Bader in the heavyweight Grand Prix, which snapped his 4-fight winning streak since joining Bellator. Sergey Kharitonov is currently riding a 5-fight winning streak since losing to Javi Ayala back in 2016, most recently coming off of a first-round TKO win over Roy Nelson. This fight right here is super tough for me to call, man. It actually really is tough for me to call. Matt Mitrione, the record's a little deceiving. He's actually been looking great. His only Bellator losses to the current champ. But I think I'm leaning towards Sergey Kharitonov because he did have a better performance against a common opponent in Roy Nelson. He's slightly younger with a lot more pro fight experience, but you can't count Matt Mitrione out. He's been fighting overall higher level competition in his career. I mean, he was fighting for the UFC, and then even in Bellator he's had the tougher opponents, aside from their common opponent, which was Roy Nelson. So this is really almost a toss-up for me. I'm giving the edge to Sergey, but I'm not super confident. This is really like a 50-50 for me. Like, I don't know the odds on any of these fights, but if one of these guys was a underdog, I'd probably just pick them. Like, if there was like a 2-to-1 underdog, let me just even see. I don't even know if there are odds for this fight. Let's see. I haven't even got into the full-times bankroll yet. So Bellator, it's almost a pick 'em. Matt Mitrione's a slight underdog. I mean, for my prediction's sake, I'm gonna pick Sergey Kharitonov. That's who I was leaning towards. But if I were making a bet, honestly, I might put, a small bet on Matt Mitrione just because it's better value, and I feel like this is a toss-up. But since this isn't a bet, I'm just going to go with the slightly younger and more experienced Sergey Kharitonov, who also had the better performance against Roy Nelson. I'll give him a slight edge to win this fight, but like I said, this is a toss-up for me, guys, so I hope you enjoyed these fights this weekend. These are not the only fights. These fights happen Friday. There's a whole nother Bellator event, I believe, on Saturday. MVP versus Daly is going to be on that card, so 2 awesome Bellator cards, plus the UFC is going down this weekend. We got some heavyweights thrown down in the UFC, so that's going to be awesome as well. So look forward to those breakdowns and predictions. Thank you for checking these out. With that being said, it is what it is. Those other videos will be dropping throughout the week. Let the full-time family know what you think in the comments. I'm out.
Bye, Felicia.